How does it feel to be gearing up for Australia?
Oh, good, good. We haven't been home that long, but it feels like it has been a while. It's been a few weeks since we were in South America, so um, just checking the continents off the list this year.
Just going back on origin and identity, right? When you think back to 2006 and Dear Love, A Beautiful Discord, what do you actually remember feeling? Like, not what you think you should remember, but what your body felt like as you were recording that.
Is inexperience a feeling? Um, yeah, I mean, I never, I never anticipated playing in a band for 20 years sustainably, and here we are. And I think I don't know. It would take me forever to describe whatever that feeling would be in 2006. Um, I just wanted to write lyrics and go to shows. And if I played in a band, I wouldn't have to buy a ticket. So that was the logic.
I feel like that's the way it should be. Metalcore in the early 2000s had this weird purity. The eyeliner and the breakdowns, they were like currency. But, when you look back, like how does it basically, how does it feel in 2025 to have outlived an entire subculture that you basically defined, you helped define?
It's weird. I almost feel like an imposter at times because I knew how important the bands were to me that defined metalcore back then. And yeah, like I want to say imposter because I'm privileged enough to continue to do it, but to give myself a little bit of credit, I have had to work very, very hard for a long time, and there've certainly been downs as well as the ups. Times where couldn't make ends meet, or times where you're fighting with someone or you're dealing with a personal relationship. So um, yeah, it I'm just grateful to be able to do this for so long and to be afforded the opportunity.
So, what part of The Devil Wears Prada has remained the same since day one, and what part would teenage Mike absolutely hate about who you become?
I don't know if I want to answer the second part, but I should.
You don't have
The
to if you don't want to.
the, the first part I think is that Jeremy and I have always really tried to instill that you work for the Devil Wears Prada. You don't work for me. You don't work for Jeremy. You don't work for John. It's this orb, this idea, this project that's the Devil Wears Prada, and you serve that. And as you serve that, it's all for the greater good for that thing. And getting to go along the ride is the privilege. And it's what's amazing. It's what's, you know, been my life for well over half of it. Um, but when it gets to the me's or the I or credit or ego, that's where it needs to like step aside. Um, because the Devil Wears Prada again isn't Jeremy, it's not me, it's not John, it's not Kyle, it's not Giuseppe. It is that orb, that thing. Um, and I think we've always treated it that way, and we work very hard to still treat it that way to this day. Um, the thing that young me wouldn't like is I think serving things at time where I personally would want it a certain way, but for the greater good or for the sake of like popularity or success, it has to be a different way. A lot of people would define that as selling out. Um, you could go on forever about what's selling out and if I've sold out or if the Devil Wears Prada sold out, whatever. Um, honestly, I sounds like a boring conversation to me. So
It sounds like
I'd
jealousy.
say
It sounds like high school jealousy, petty jealousy.
and that's one of the bad things about early metalcore was that it could be so competitive. Competitive's good, but at the same time, like the gatekeeping and the like incestuous fighting was kind of the bad side. It's funny thinking back to like the world tours and whatnot, and people were like again, competing so much rather than helping open the door for the whole scene, you know. And I think that's one of the better things going on now. Um, but that's a different topic.
I love that though. I mean, it just shows so much humor through the endurance of that era. You know, you've been through a lot. You've seen some stuff. Every Devil Wears Prada album seems to function like a timestamp for your inner life. How much of Flowers is autobiography versus like conceptual metaphor?
I think it's deeply autobiographical. Um, and not to speak for them, but especially for John and Jeremy. Because for the longest time I formulated like every lyric that Devil Wears Prada made. And these days that's not how it goes. Sometime during the act, really, John would just put lyrics to songs he worked on, and they were really good. And we started making songs like Chemical, which John wrote every lyric for. So, um, yeah, again, I don't want to speak too much for them, but deeply autobiographical in terms of coming to terms with contentment, discontentment, anxiety, stress. Um, yeah, I wouldn't call it very conceptual in those regards.
The only argument I would have is with the video Eyes. That video made me feel like MySpace was like the Outlook hotel. So I don't know if you were going for those vibes, but those vibes are there. Um,
I
so
actually
the
didn't think of that.
it was a head trip. That whole video is a head trip. So the production of Flowers feels cinematic, almost like it's breathing in between screams. Were you thinking in terms of film, photography, or visual storytelling while recording this?
Not so much for me. I think John and Jeremy were definitely kind of putting the guidelines or like projecting what the future was going to look like. I was just trying to figure out what it was going to be called, first of all, because we did so much of this album without it being called Flowers, and it's kind of a point of anxiety thinking back all over the years of when you're making an album and you don't know what it's called. Um, it's so stressful. It's like this like over looming this looming cloud over your head. Like, well, we have all the songs, but what are you going to call it? Because you got to call it something. So I was more in that space, and then um, I remember very distinctly when we were writing out the vocal for "Where the Flowers Never Grow" and how awesome it felt having this whole flowers thing in the middle of this metalcore song, and yeah, it just kind of unveiled itself later down the line. So yeah, I was kind of thinking more on that than the visual aesthetic.
You've mentioned before that, lyricism is like your anchor. What's harder now, writing something true or writing something that sounds relatively true?
The latter, because I have no problem writing something that's true. Um, I think the problem I have is rehashing old shit or not doing something fresh or something that serves the Devil Wears Prada, specifically, like I was mentioning earlier, the whole orb kind of metaphor. Um, yeah, I have no problem writing something that's true. I just a lot of where I go these days doesn't sound all that great screamed over a Devil Wears Prada song. So I'd say that's the struggle for me at least.
The Devil Wears Prada was once the band that kids in the lunchroom argued about. I saw it. What's the closest modern band you look at and think they remind me of us back then?
It sucks because they called it, but when we were out with CU Space Cowboy, it was really awesome because they had that youthful dynamic and like that vigor, you know, of and excitement. We tend to be jaded here and there these days, old men, boomers. Um, so I would kind of go to them, but I don't know. You see it in glimpses in terms of bands in the van, you know, opening shows and um, gosh, who did I just see? I'm forgetting the name now, but I saw him open for Cloakroom, and I kind of got that vibe. But yeah, I guess See You Space Cowboy is the first one that came to mind.
I have to get deeper into them. I've been in my doom and gloom era lately, so that'll be number one on my new list. Okay, so, what's your take on how mental health is now marketed in heavy music, the like commodification of trauma? Do you feel protective of that message or kind of like disillusioned?
I feel like grateful that it has a name. Like we didn't call it, especially as someone that struggled with depression and anxiety my whole life, but didn't know what anxiety was or what a panic attack was. Giving it a name, I feel like lends so much accessibility. And I know that doesn't so much speak specifically for like commodifying it in the music scene, but I don't know. I don't think it cheapens it or anything. I think we just are better suited to address the things we the things we battle. Um, and I know, like for me, that's years of therapy really helping me out. And that's kind of the thing that goes a long way for me is if I know I have that tool in the toolbox, it can help me solve the problem. And I think looking at music and identifying our mental health struggles is all in all a positive thing, I think. If that answers at all your question.
It does entirely. Touring used to be this badge of suffering after, nearly 2 decades. How do you balance exhaustion with gratitude?
I don't think it's all that hard because at the end of the day, I get to travel the world and yell for a living. So if I'm being sour or dramatic or a diva, it's like, well, one of the things I always say, and it's a little cliche, but is if I found a better job, I'd take it. And the fact of the matter is that I've never, I have no idea what a better job would be than this one. So it's tough. I'm married. I have two dogs. I live in a dream home on quiet land in Wisconsin and get to play hockey um, a few times a week. So I don't know. I'm just grateful. Anytime where it's like, oh, touring is tough. It's like I've done it so many times, and I always get back. We just did South America for the third time. Things can get a little sketchy down there, and
Yeah.
I've lost count how many times I've been to Australia, but I'm flying there tomorrow. So yeah, having a tough time on tour is it's all worth it.
You are blessing Australia. They need it. They need the love. So it's cool. It's cool. You got the right direction going. All right, the album title Flowers implies something gentle, but the music still rips like you're purging old spirits. What are you actually laying to rest with this record?
I haven't thought of it so much as laying something to rest as opening the can of worms. Um, but that also speaks very much to me because I'm extremely future oriented. I struggle deeply with being present, and I hate thinking about the past. Um, but I think so much of Flowers is coming to terms with where we're at. My reality, Jeremy's reality, John's reality. Like, I think coming to terms is laying something to rest, or at least you could put it in that kind of perspective. So, um, yeah, I think it's the realization of, a lot of the album is about having everything you want, but still being discontent. And um, I don't know, maybe that's laying something to rest in and of itself.
From what I've seen, there's a lyricism to the artwork, delicate but destructive. If Flowers were a film, what would its final scene look like?
It'd be a cliffhanger of some sort. I feel like the audience would be like, "What? That's it?" Um, and I think that's the reality of again being present versus future oriented and whatnot. Like, or I don't know. I feel like it's just inconclusive, in the best way. And that's easy for me to say because I like stories that don't have a real ending or films that leave you again being like, oh my God, that's it. Like, I love that feeling. It's sort of absurd and comical. And um, I think if the album was a film, it would have something like that to conclude.
Dig it. Which track on Flowers do you think fans will misunderstand the most and why?
I don't know. I'm so willfully ignorant when it comes to fan feedback that I never really I don't tune in at all to comments and whatnot. I of course talk with fans if you run into them outside the venue or we do meet and greets or whatever. Um, so I don't know. I kind of look forward to what what's most misunderstood. Um, I don't know. Again, playing to the ignorant part, I heard this Bill Burr, Josh Homme podcast where they say that like all of like, you can receive like dozens of nice comments and whatnot, and you can like your ego inflates or whatever, but then that one bad one ruins all of the good ones. And I very much uh sympathize with that. I feel the exact same way. So in terms of fans misunderstanding something, I don't know. I kind of just turn a blind eye.
Right. To be expected. It's the interpretation of art, whatever. Okay, so how collaborative was this process compared to the past records? Do you feel more like a director or, just a participant?
For me, a participant, um, again, I wrote everything lyrically for the longest time, and that sort of changing the guard has happened, um, which I'm totally good with. I love our process, and I love that our process has changed. I feel like changing the exercise or the system of making things is the best way to make something fresh or different or new. Going to the same studio over and over and recording again and again the same way can, of course, work great for some artists, but not for me. So yeah, becoming more of a participant and letting other people's vision sort of reach the limelight a little more is great. A lot of the songs we started with producers and folks in LA at their home studios that were like, hey, this is something that I kind of hear in the Divorce Prada, and we would like kind of start there. And it's very different than like the traditional, six guys in a band get in a room and start jamming. So um, yeah, for me, all for the better in terms of being the director versus the participant.
All right, so last two questions. After 20 years of being Mike, the guy from The Devil Wears Prada, who is Mike when the microphone's off and the lights die out?
Ordinary Wisconsin man, uh, hobbyist, dog owner guy. Um, yeah, off the stage and whatnot. It's a little strange because I hate being in the spotlight, and it's funny that I've been the lead front man of a band for 20 years. Um, but yeah, I like to relax and take it easy here in Wisconsin and play hockey, watch hockey, renovate my home, try and be a good husband, cook vegan food, and uh, you know, do laundry.
That's perfect. All right, finally, when all the distortion fades and you hear silence, what do you still want from this world?
People to serve one another comes to mind. Um, People to be kind. Um, uh, and to serve the planet and animals too. That's an important cause for me. Um, so yeah, I guess in two words, human kindness, perhaps. That was three because I added the perhaps.